very special guest, my sister, Olivia Jackson, who is a certified makeup artist and a former veteran. Sorry, not sure if we're alive. Hello, beautiful world, and welcome to another episode of Raven Thissel Live. Tonight, I am so excited to bring you a very special and precious to me guest, my little sister, Olivia Jackson. She is an Army veteran and a professional makeup artist. She is known all over the internet, all over social media, Instagram, TikTok, for her really creative and artistic facial designs. And you'll see exactly what I mean when we bring her on. But first, I want to give you the fact check of the day. Now, today's fact check is a little bit different. This time, I want to invite you to think more deeply about how you love and take care of yourself. How much space are you creating for you to be different, for you to be whatever makes you truly unique, for you to stand out? Are you living in the confines of what you think you are supposed to be, who you think you are supposed to be, or a box that someone else created for you? Are you living someone else's dream for you? Are you truly speaking your truth? Do your beliefs and your actions line up? I want to challenge the viewers tonight to ask yourselves, what are your values? What are my values? And write them down. And in the process of writing down a few things that are essential to the heart of who you are and what you do in your life, I would like for you to write down at least three actions, three things that you do on a regular basis that line up with each of your values. And if you can't think of three things that line up with each of your values, then there might be a starting point for you to live a more authentic life. Another good question to ask is, what things am I doing on a regular basis that do not line up with my values? When are the times where I am holding back or I'm giving things that I don't necessarily want to give or think are right? Ask yourselves these questions, and then you'll find answers to how can I live in more of my dreams? How can I live in more of my purpose? How can I have more joy in life? All of the answers to those questions can begin shaping up by taking a close look at your values and whether or not you are living in alignment with them. So, with that in mind, please welcome with me my dear, dear sweet sister and our guest for this evening, Olivia Jackson.
Hey.
Hey, sis. I love tonight's look. Please tell us what inspired your look.
I was looking at a picture and I just kind of went from there. I usually either use a picture as a reference or I just come up with it myself.
A reference picture?
hmm
Okay, like a picture of someone else's makeup or a picture of
Yeah,
anything.
someone else's makeup and I just did
Nice.
a spin on it.
I love it. I love it. So let's go ahead and talk about us. Like, you've been my sister since you were born, pretty
Right.
much.
Right.
And I think it's interesting that we both kind of have these hippy dippy, think outside the box type personalities. And I wonder, what do you think our parents did to cultivate this type of person that we both seem to have become?
I think they gave us a certain level of creative freedom to
Mm.
express ourselves, like find our own outlets of expression and not necessarily like you need to do this blah 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 because this is the path that I want you to go down. So I think that helped me a lot personally to be able to start drawing, and then same with you because we both started drawing at a really young age and then it just blossomed into other forms of creativity.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I didn't realize that until you said it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because I just didn't, I felt really neglected a lot growing up. So I
I,
didn't think about, you did too?
yeah, but I also I guess that's one thing that drew me into art as well because I don't think that I've really met any artists that haven't had some type of childhood that explains why they're artists. That's the best way I
Yeah.
could think to put it. It was something that, and I used to feel like going through that stuff was for no reason, but I don't feel like I would be the person I am if I didn't go through it, or as creative if I didn't go through it either. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So tonight I want to talk about perception. I want to talk about reputation. I want to talk about, people's ideas about who we are, who we should be, or what's true about us or what's not. And I think a good starting point is those foundational expectations or a lack thereof that were set by our parents.
right,
So, um, even though I did feel neglected sometimes, I knew that we were loved. Like I
right,
never felt like we were unloved.
right.
We have a very affectionate mom, um, and a dad who is. How would you describe your dad? So Libby's dad is my stepdad. How would you describe him?
Tough love.
Okay.
It's I love you, but I'm not always gonna say it, and I'm gonna show it in my own way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Emphasis on in my own way.
right, right. And I agree with mom being affectionate too, but sometimes it could have been a little bit suffocating, I guess, because like, oh, I love you,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. It's like kind of these extremes of like a
hmm,
little bit suffocating and then neglectful. It's like,
yeah,
you know,
and
it
we're
was
in
never. What'd you say?
I said we're in the middle. We found like a balance of our own in our own personal lives.
You think so?
I personally think so. I
Yeah.
feel very proud of how far we've come and the people that we've became and stuff.
I'm very proud of you.
Thank you.
So you made a choice that before I move to this question,
Hmm.
like shout out to our parents
Right.
because they
We were
both did the best that they could with what
right.
they knew. And I think that I learned a lot of good things that I'm grateful to have learned from both of them.
Right.
I want to do a story time. With mom, I learned how to show someone that you care.
Right.
Like, not just to say that you care, but actually show it.
Right.
I feel like she's very good at being present when she chooses to be.
I
She's
agree.
good at showing empathy and compassion to people. It comes naturally to her. And so watching her care about people was an essential thing for me that I
Right.
learned. And also, she's just so smart and talented. And she never told herself no when it came to trying new things.
And she
And
never
I
put
appreciate
box.
she never put herself in a box. And to this day, you cannot put Stacy in a box.
Right.
And I
Right.
appreciate that
Same.
example.
I understand.
Yeah, I feel like that was good. What do you feel like some things that you learned from mom that you really appreciate?
Um, hmm. I appreciate how she tries to look at things in different ways. Even, I mean, sometimes it's in the moment and sometimes it's later on, but she does, she's able to give a different perspective, whether it's with giving advice or, and it's sometimes it's not something that you want to hear, but it is from a place of I am looking out for your best interest and I might see something that you might not see. I'm also learning, well, I guess the older you get, you notice more patterns in yourself about your parents that you have. So one of the things that I feel like I'm learning right now is accountability and more self-awareness, because it's really easy for us to look outward and be like, no, you did this to me and as a result I acted this way, versus it being, this situation happened, there's nothing I could do to change it, but for the future, how can I adjust myself to better handle the situation in a way where it doesn't turn out to have the same outcome? So I feel like that helped me as well.
Yeah, seriously. That's hard. For me, it was about 5 or 6 years into therapy before I really started doing that from an honest place. Like I
Mhm.
was doing it on a surface level, but I still had a lot of blame and resentment.
That's
So
understandable because you probably didn't. The resentment I feel like comes from lack of understanding and us wanting to create our own narrative of what the story was instead of, like I said before, seeing it for what it is and accepting it for what it is in that moment because we can't change it into something else.
yeah, so wise.
Yeah.
So my sister is 6 years younger than me, and I couldn't be more impressed and proud of
Thank
this
you.
person. Like, um, so yeah, no, I
I'm
completely
even
agree,
proud.
like completely. And then my story time was about your dad. So when we were little, you might remember this because we've never talked about it outside of it happening. We were young, maybe like I was maybe like 9 or 10 at the oldest. And so you would have been like 2 or 3. You might not remember this. You were pretty young. So one day, mom was joking around. She was like making these, um, she was like breaking her wrist and like making these noises and stuff, sort of like, pretending to be someone who's differently abled. And she was doing it as a joke. And I, my kid phase, I was laughing. I thought it was funny, and I just liked being silly and having silly moments with mom. And I think we both learned something from him in this moment that we both have carried with us for the rest of our life. um, but in that moment was the first time that he ever yelled at me. Well, he yelled at us
Mm-hmm.
for laughing. And he was just like, that is not funny. It's not okay. There's nothing funny about it. And when he said that, I immediately felt ashamed. I felt ashamed because I didn't put it into context until I saw his reaction. And I don't think she did either. And so from that moment, I realized for the first time that I needed to take what type of jokes people made seriously, and that making fun of a condition, is, even if it's not directed at a particular person, is still not okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so that became a foundational motif for me. Later, I would stand up to bullies and things like that, and stand up for people who were different and who didn't have a voice. And now that's my whole, like, it's a big part of my life now. And I
Mm-hmm.
think for me, it started with that moment of him snapping at us and me feeling shame. Shame was a teacher for me in that situation. What about you? Do you remember that?
No.
You were laughing too. Okay.
Um,
It's one lock.
I don't remember that, but I do feel like a lot of the things that we deal with in childhood does affect us and impact us a lot in our adulthood. And I don't feel like a lot of people pay as much attention to that stuff. And I personally didn't until recently because I used to feel like looking at the past or referring to the past was a bad thing. I don't know why, but it it helped me to realize why I am the way that I am and kind of dig deeper into figuring out if these pieces of myself that I've brought from childhood and stuff I want to keep, or if I want to get rid of them, or if I want to improve them, or is this a generational curse? Do I need to break this and so that my kids don't have to deal with it and stuff? And just kind of molding it or allowing it to mold you into who you're meant to be. So I agree that that does play a
Yeah,
big part in your life.
for sure. Do you have like any moments like that that you remember that were like, damn, that's something that I want to keep?
Hmm. For some reason, while you were telling that story, I was thinking about when we lived in Virginia and mom was at work. and it was me and our cousin, and we were sitting on the stairs, and Dad was in his room on the computer, and our cousin had scissors, and he was cutting up all the shoestrings that he could find in the house. And I was like, I think I want to cut my hair. So
I
I
remember that.
I cut a big chunk of my hair. Mom was so mad when she got home, and I had to do like the slick, the slick house for a minute so my hair could grow. But in that moment, I learned that I should ask questions first, and if I feel like it's not the right thing to do, it might seem fun, but don't do it. 'Cause there might be consequences. But yeah, that's the only thing I could think of right now.
Yeah, that was intense. That was intense. And she was mad at all of us. Like
Yeah, she was.
she was most mad at him, but she was also mad at me because you weren't watching your sister. Like nobody was watching her.
Yeah,
And she couldn't really even be that mad at you because you were so little.
right. Yeah, I was super
And you
young,
cut it
but
right in the front. I remember you had she had your hair in triangle puffs or braids, and
yeah.
all the parts were triangles, and you cut the triangle in the front down to the meat. Like, and so you had to have comb over hairstyles. And I remember there were times, do you remember I used to do your hair too?
Mhm.
Man, it was so hard to comb over through that, rake that hair across there and make it look natural. Boy,
We finessed it though. I don't think anybody noticed. We did
fantastic.
good.
You were still so cute. It didn't even matter. But maybe it was foreshadowing that you would cut your hair and stuff later in life.
Hmm. That might be it because I do feel like I go through a phase every few years or so of um growing my hair out to a certain length or letting it get long, and then I'm like, okay, I think I'm bored, and then just whoop,
Yeah.
and then just starting fresh, like a rebirth, I guess, type
Mhm.
situation. Yeah,
So you were just being yourself.
pretty much.
Yeah. You were just being yourself. You got in
Pretty.
trouble for being
I didn't,
yourself that time.
but no, I feel like I deal with that a lot now too. Now that you said that, as far as getting in trouble for being myself, um, I feel like as an artist, we are very misunderstood, and I've felt like that pretty much my whole life of just wanting to be heard or just wanting to feel like I am being seen in a certain way. But then it comes off as, okay, I guess I could use my makeup for example. It comes off as a requirement for me to get recognized, if that makes sense. And
Oh, yeah, I get that.
I use that example because I feel like I deal with that a lot at my school, as far as I'm gonna talk to her because she has her makeup on today, but any other day it's like, oh, no makeup, and it's like, well, I mean, yes, I'm an artist, and yes, that might be what I'm known for, but that's not all I have to offer. And I feel like if people actually sat down and had a conversation about, like, learning about me more,
Libby, you're frozen.
and why is also a part of, it's a part of my identity, but it's not my identity. And then also, just like we were talking about with mom, just not putting people in a box because of what the outside looks like. Because yes, the outside is a reflection of how people feel on the inside, but that's not always the case, and I do feel like that has taught me to ask more questions and not to just assume stuff about people, because you can learn from anyone in any situation. And I don't take it as personally as I used to, because I had to resonate with myself as an artist first. And I had to define that within myself for me to be able to introduce myself in a certain way as an artist, because there are a billion and one artists, but we all have something very unique and beautiful to bring to the table. But if we don't know what that is, then it kind of it could be a chaotic um, situation or process for us to learn how to develop into that. And I feel like that process started from me being in isolation for a while. Sometimes it was voluntary, sometimes it wasn't. It was just more of me listening to my spirit and what it felt like it needed at that time. But being in isolation helped me to not hear anybody else's voice but my own. Because once I zoned in more on myself and what I needed and the direction that I wanted and how I wanted to present myself, it didn't really bother me as much to hear other people's viewpoints of what they feel like I was doing.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, as far as being misunderstood, like, I don't know about you, but being misunderstood has been one of the most painful
Mm-hmm.
things in my life, and it's caused issues for me. Like, it's easy to say, like, doesn't matter what other people think, for sure. Like, the president, well, maybe the vice president of the not giving a fuck what people think club is right here. But at the same time, sometimes perception really does impact your life, from
Yes.
people just running away with their perception of things or their understanding of things, and they create chaos by not asking questions, by assuming um, that they've gotten something, a person or a situation, when they really don't.
Mm-hmm.
So, and honestly, being misunderstood used to be my biggest fear for years. Actually, for most of my adult life. It's only recently that I have begun to like let go, or begun to let go of that fear. So, for you, in your experience, has being misunderstood caused you any actual losses? Not just pain, but like losses in your life?
Um, I used to feel like they were losses, but I learned that in order for something to take its rightful place in your life, other things have to move out the way. So I wanted to hold on to maybe people or my own perspective of things, or whatever the case was. But once I learned to let go, it became easier for one. And then two, I feel like it helped me to appreciate the things that are meant to be there, and to also set boundaries with what I know I deserve. Because once the things that weren't meant to be there left, it's like, okay, well, they left for a reason. And if I force it, then I'm going to be taking myself out of character to be able to put somebody where I feel like they deserve to be and they didn't, or the environments that I was in. And my art has helped me to learn how to transition. So
Mm,
I feel like transition and also growth requires for you to be uncomfortable. And if
mm,
you're not uncomfortable, then you're stagnant. And I mean, there are other people that might see it differently, but for me, that's the tunnel vision of it. Like, that's the only way that I've noticed it is if say I get my dream job and I'm like, oh, this is exactly where I want it to be. I think I'm good now. And eventually I could start to resent that dream job because of the fact that I'm not allowing myself to develop more past that, because like I said, I got comfortable, but that isn't all that I have to offer. So I feel like, put ourselves in a box because we're scared of the unknown in the direction that things could lead us. So yeah.
Yes. Yes to all of that. I love that you highlighted first that you used to think of those things as losses. But wisdom says there are no losses. There are
Mm-hmm.
no L's. There's
That's
only progress. There's only forward.
right.
And sometimes forward means separating. Things
Mm-hmm.
fall off. I often compare us to plants. Plants have to be pruned.
I love
They
nature.
they outgrow. What'd you say?
I said I love nature, so
Yes, we do. I think it's because we grew up in a house with so many plants.
mm-hmm.
Um, but we are nature. We
Right.
are nature. And so in the process of growing and developing, I mean in the process of life, we don't have a choice except to separate. And I love that you highlighted, Libby, that when we try to force things, we try to force something to stay or someone to stay, or we try to force something in that doesn't belong, we are stepping outside of ourselves when we do that. We're stepping outside of what's best for us, our own journey, our own path.
Mm-hmm.
So that path of least resistance has been a beautiful concept that I've only recently welcomed into my life. Not trying to, in the spiritual community, there's this huge focus on manifesting. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you have to manifest, figure out what you want really bad and just, put your energy toward manifesting it and you can do it. You just have to think it and believe it. And it's this really gainful and intentional, singular, sort of focused perversion of spiritual truths
Mm-hmm.
instead of you can want. Sure, absolutely. Desire. Recognize that the voice inside of you is divine and it connects and speaks directly to the larger, greater divinity that exists, both of which are you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's okay, but live, be in the moment, being present, doing the things that you feel you should be doing in the moment. Yes to this, no to that. And in the process of being yourself, you let things go, you open doors up. You have to be brave enough to do both,
Right.
and in that experience, all we do is grow. All we do is go forward. All we do is, experience more. So I really appreciate your, like, beautifully well said articulation of how it's not a loss.
And I also feel like fear is, dang, I just had it in my head. I was thinking about it whenever whenever you were talking. Oh, fear I feel is a way of us wanting to control the unknown. So realistically, we can only control things to a certain extent, and we can only worry about how we allow things to affect us and not necessarily the situation. And we can't necessarily control the complete outcome of it. But a lot of people, I guess you could say, are somewhat stuck in their ways with thinking that this is how I've always been. So why should I change?
Whew.
But it's not to say that you need to change or you're changing, you have to. It should be a want to improve, not change. And I feel like the wording of it kind of makes it intimidating for people to not want to grow or to feel like growth is something that needs to be constant in their life. Um, I I've learned that with my own life as far as just sitting down one day and just really thinking about like all the different transitions that I've been through and situations where I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna get out of this. Like, what is going on? But once I made it to the other side of the situation and I look back, I realized that if I didn't get over my fear of the outcome and the fear of the unknown and the things that I can't control, then I wouldn't have made it to that point. So it is a swallowing your pride that needs to happen in a lot of ways. It's also accepting the fact that we aren't always right and we're not always wrong either. And then also realizing that we can learn something from anybody and anything. I can learn from a 2-year-old about how to keep my innocence and to see the world as something new every day. Or I can learn from an 80-year-old woman that says things aren't going to be as important as you're making them right now. When you're my age, it's not going to matter. So why are you giving it this much power over you or this much attention right now? So taking in life for what it is, and like you said, we are plants because we're allowing certain things in our vessel to water us and to either develop us into something negative or something positive. And we are in control of a lot of those things, but we feel like, um I guess if we've been doing it this long and it's worked, then oh well. Like, this is just how I'm gonna be for the rest of my life. And it's always room for improvement. There's always room for improvement.
Yeah. And I think that desperation for improvement sometimes makes us fear. It makes us resist. Like when you said that fear is trying to control, I couldn't agree more. Fear is resistance.
Mm-hmm.
It's resistance, and resistance is control. And so when we get into that space of like, okay, I'm open to improve. I want to improve. Of course, I want to improve. It makes us resist any forms of improvement that don't look like improvement right now.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, that's why I shifted to using the term growth, because sometimes the growth does not seem like a step forward, doesn't seem or feel like it's an improvement. It feels and seems like it's a step backward, or it's a detriment.
Right.
It's not a straight line, it's a jungle gym. It's sometimes it's to the left, sometimes you got to step down to get over. It's a rock wall. Um, so yeah, I completely resonate with that. And I wonder how, as artists, we all seem to allow ourselves to tap into this space of uncertainty. Um, and
Fear,
people, sorry,
fear of being accepted.
fear of being accepted. Talk about that.
Um, because I'm relating it to me. Uh, I feel like I said before, I've always kind of just stood out naturally, and I used to want to like hide from everybody and everything and just be in the house because for some reason attention bothered me a lot. It made me really uncomfortable, and I was. You told me this a while ago, and I don't know if you remember. But you said I feel like you're dimming your light.
Mm.
And this was before I even started my makeup stuff. Oh, that made me want to cry. Um, but yeah, and I didn't realize what it was that I was like, what you talking about? This is just me. Like, I don't know what else I'm supposed to be doing. But now that I'm coming more into myself and I have to accept myself first, and I have to also give myself permission to not dim my light. If it's something that's making someone uncomfortable, then there's something about me that's intimidating something in them that they haven't activated yet. Maybe they don't know what their light is, and all of our lights are supposed to be different. We're meant to be different. And it's not to uh, hype myself up either. I always try to help other people, and I always try to accept help and stuff like that from other people. But for the most part, um, once I started walking into spaces and being like, this is who I am, and introducing myself and presenting myself as that wholeheartedly wherever I go, because I wear my makeup like this out. Like, and at first, it didn't really. I would wear it to school, and that would be it. I would come home and wash it off, go to sleep. But then I started like going out to like the mall or something, or like to the movies or something like that. Because one of my friends was telling me, you are your own advertisement. Like, I don't really have other people to practice on. So if I'm not presenting myself, then how are people going to know who I am, or what I'm doing, or what I stand for, or what I'm trying to present? So dimming your light, um, to me, is a lack of confidence in your abilities. Because, like you said, we as artists, we can be hard on ourselves because we're different. We're not meant to be put in the box with everybody else. We don't follow the rules per se. We we create our own rules, and we create our own world, and then we welcome the outside world into our world. But if we don't know what kind of world we want to create, then we're just kind of leading people down a blind path. And we're leading ourselves down a blind path as well. Um, but I do feel like if it wasn't for my art, I wouldn't have gotten to the level of understanding within myself and for other people. Because once I started seeing my own potential, I started seeing everybody's potential. And I feel like the way that you see yourself is the way that you see the world. So if you see yourself in a very negative way, oh, I hate my stretch marks, I hate my body, and I need to change this, and I got a pimple, I'm not gonna go outside today. Or we we don't see the world in a positive way whenever we do choose to go out, because we want to change all this stuff about ourselves. So once we see someone else that's doing something different that we might not understand, we want to change them too, instead of accepting them for who they are and allowing them the space to be comfortable enough to improve, and allowing ourselves that necessary space as well.
Hmm. Okay, so you made me cry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
Hopefully, I can hear.
No, actually, it wasn't you in a bad way. Just that I'm so proud of you, and I'm relieved because you experienced, and also it warms me to hear you say that you remember me telling you about that you were dimming your light. And I'm grateful that you remember that. And that's the thing that you call out, because I beat myself up a lot about our relationship,
Oh,
because I remember times when I was hard on you, and I don't feel like I was giving you the permission that you didn't need it from me, but
right.
I feel like I was being a barrier to
Oh,
you in some ways in those times. And one time in particular stands out to me. I'm really ashamed of it because, and I'm still working through a lot of shame around the way that I used my gifts when I was religious. Like when I was a devout Christian, and I was just as passionate and committed to that as I am passionate and committed to everything else in my life that I'm passionate and committed to right now. So at that time, I look back on myself like, wow, I was such a czar. Like I was just a hard person. And really, when I think of a Virgo, I think of the old me when I was in religion. And now I don't know how to classify the Virgo parts anymore, but the controlling, like by the book, very practical, everything needs to be like it's supposed to be person that I was trying so hard to be. I remember when it was your high school graduation, and I remember feeling like you shouldn't wear the outfit that you were wearing.
Remember that it was polka dots.
And and it and I hurt your feelings
Hmm.
on your graduation day because I was conservative. And I felt like you should be conservative at your graduation and you shouldn't express yourself.
Hmm.
And that memory is something that I'm just so mortified by today because it's completely the opposite of who I am now.
Right.
And I didn't permit myself. It's just like what you were saying a minute ago. Like people will only guide you to where they are going or where they think they should be going.
Hmm.
They can't take you someplace that they haven't been. So as somebody who had never permitted myself to live in my truth and be free, I I projected that onto you in your moment, and you taught me, like thinking back on that, which I have many times over the years. How many years ago was that?
That was
That was a long time ago.
uh, yeah, I don't know.
So
Two
I
thousand.
thought about that, and that has been a defining moment for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like remembering that has helped me to embrace myself the same way that you did. I feel like you came into owning yourself faster than me, before me. And
Hmm.
so you have influenced me to be okay with who I am.
One.
Yeah.
Thank
So I still wish I could like take that back.
you.
Um
No. And it's like I said before, I used to feel like a lot of the stuff that I went through was for no reason. But if you didn't get if you didn't get to the point of thinking that you are now, you without that experience, I don't feel like you would have had the same reaction. I don't feel like you would have known exactly what to improve on. And I feel like if we get a different delivery of a situation, we're going to get a different outcome. And that outcome might not be what we need. Um, I don't think that, I don't take it as it was me being restricted. I personally took that moment as please just understand me. Just
mm,
hear what I'm saying. And I think that I do go through that a lot as far as because I am naturally just a soft spoken person. And that could come off as she doesn't know who she is, or she doesn't know what she wants, or she doesn't know what she's looking for. Let me help her. And yes, I accept help, but to a certain extent, allow that person to introduce themselves first so you know who or you know who you're dealing with and what to help them with. Because we're, like I said before, we're not always right, but we're also not always wrong either. And it's about the delivery of what we have to say and not necessarily about what we're saying. Because I had a conversation with my director earlier at school, and we were talking about, like, I guess a disagreement I had with my teacher. And she was like, so do you feel like, no, she said, you feel like you're always right. And I was like, no, I don't. And she was like, see, that's what I'm talking about. I was like, no, I feel like I am a different person than who I used to be. The person that I used to be would be like, oh, well, it's okay. Like, the situation's not that big of a deal, even if it hurt me. Because I wanted to make sure that even the person that hurt me, okay. But now it's, I'm going to stand up for myself. This is how I'm going to present myself. You either accept it or you don't. But, and I'm not, it's not an expectation, but I feel like if people do know me well enough, and can sense the way that I present myself, it's not going to come from a negative place or a harsh place. It's going to come from a place of caring and understanding, but now the delivery is different. And people don't always expect for you to, well, the issue is having expectations in the first place. Because I feel like expectations lead us to disappointment. But
Yeah.
keeping an open mind about stuff leaves room for us to actually adjust. But if we have expectations, we stay in our own mindset of, no, this is how it's supposed to be. And I feel like once I explained that to her, it was more of like, okay, like it's not her just harping on situations, and a lot of people might take it as that because that was how it was delivered, but I had to learn for myself that I'm just naturally a really passionate person about everything. Like literally everything. If it's an issue, I'm going to be passionate about it. If I'm happy, I'm going to be passionate about it. If there's something that needs to be acknowledged, whatever the case is. And that's something that I had to learn for myself. Um, but I wouldn't have learned that if I didn't go through the experience that I went through or the conversations or anything like that. So yeah.
Hmm.
And art also isn't meant to always be understood.
Mm.
It's meant to be admired. It's meant to be, so think I would think of like a abstract painting. Whenever an abstract artist does a painting, they have their own perception of what it is, but somebody else could look at it and be like, no, I see this. That doesn't mean that their viewpoint is wrong. That's just what they see from the experience. And I feel like we need to be more open minded towards other people's experiences with the same situation, because we can relate to people to a certain extent, but we can't. And I say that because me and you could go through the same experience and have two completely different outcomes. And I can't completely relate to it because I'm not you. And I didn't experience it in the same way that you did. But we can coexist and share our viewpoints on it and be able to see, okay, well, if you took this in a negative way and I took it in more of a positive way, maybe we can help each other to balance things out so that we can get past the experience together versus people fighting the experience and each other.
Mm.
So yeah, I felt like that was a lot.
No, I think it was just the perfect amount,
Okay.
the perfect amount of wisdom to share on the topic. Um, I feel like there's an element of external perception and internal perception in all of the concepts that you're sharing about. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, I would love to hear your views on balancing internal perspective, external perspective. Like, obviously, us expressing ourselves and being ourselves is paramount. That's been the foundational topic of the entire conversation thus far. And especially as artists, we have a message always to be conveying in some way or expressing. Um, but in the world that we live in the real external world of other people and systems and currency and all the things, there is a measure of conformity and or censorship and or managing expectations and perceptions that we have to take into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
I am at a point of finding a new balance in that. And I feel like I will constantly, for the rest of my life, be shifting that balance. I
Mm-hmm.
would love to hear your thoughts on managing perception, managing external perception, when to care what other people think.
Hmm. I had this conversation with one of my friends a few days ago. That's crazy. Um, I guess it's a sense of asking yourself why this bothers me. Why is it bringing out certain emotions? Why is being around this certain person causing me to feel this way? Do I like the way that it feels? Do I not like the way that it feels? Just asking it, with really just checking in with yourself and asking yourself the necessary questions, because sometimes we could get irritated with other people for not asking us those questions. But like
Woo.
I said before, we it starts with us and how we treat ourselves, and we show the world how to treat us based on how we treat ourselves. So I guess going back to the makeup thing with me and people voicing their opinion about when I do and don't wear it. Like I said, it used to bother me because I was like, dang, like, am I ugly without my makeup? Like, what is that? What's going on? But
No.
I had to, right. I had to realize that people identified with me as a makeup artist, but I didn't identify with myself as a makeup artist.
Mm.
Even if I had, like, I probably didn't start identifying with myself as a makeup artist or as an artist in general until probably like 2 months ago.
What?
Right. It's, I don't know what it was that was causing the disconnect besides the fact that I just wasn't resonating with myself as that. And there was a level of me not completely accepting it because I have been a free spirited floating person my whole life. And I felt like me putting myself in this category is like, oh my God, I'm restricted. Like, I can't do nothing else now. Like, this is just who I am. And that's not the case. It's a part of me that I needed to accept wholeheartedly and still be able to identify as that person regardless of if I'm presenting it as that or not in that moment. My presence needs to present it more than the picture. And I had to dig deep spiritually with that to be able to say, this is who you are at your core. And you didn't know that until now, but the pieces of you and the experiences you've dealt with have always been there. But over the years, they connected and things started making sense and conversations started making sense because I've been doing makeup since I was like 15. And I went to cosmetology school right after high school, but I didn't finish because I went to the military. And in the military, I didn't really do my makeup. I did it every once in a while, but for the most part, we look like, rough all the time. And once I got out, I started to find my
Pause.
artistry
Sorry.
again.
My
Yeah,
sister never looked rough. They look rough. You look like you didn't have any makeup on. That was all. Okay, go ahead.
cute. But I connected with my artistry again afterwards, after I got out the military. And that time frame of me not connecting with it, there was I used to feel like it was, like I said, a waste of time. Why am I experiencing this right now? But if I didn't experience those things, I wouldn't have appreciated where I am, and I wouldn't know who I am. And I don't feel like I would have been as passionate or as determined as I am now to reach a certain goal, because I told myself that I wasn't just going to talk about my goals anymore. I was going to actually push towards improving and following them. But yeah, that comes from knowing who you are and how you want to be presented.
Mm. Knowing who you are and how you want to be presented.
Mm-hmm.
So, this is like understanding your own authenticity, where you are on your journey, Deciding, like you said in the very beginning, okay, these are the things I'm observing in myself. Do I want to keep this? Do I want to discard it? Do I want to adjust it, explore
Mm-hmm.
it? And then deciding, how do I want to be perceived,
Right.
instead of just kind of haphazardly showing up, like I usually have done in the past, and been like, well, think what you want to think. Um, but having a decisive brand. And I
Mm-hmm.
never thought about, when you're beginning to dive into, how do I want to be perceived as a marketing person, I call that your brand. Um,
Mm-hmm.
then, how do I want to be branded in this situation or with this type of person? Um, and that opening up the door to you being intentional about where you care, um, and how you distribute your fucks that you give.
Mm-hmm.
uh, but Libby, thank you so much. You have taught me a lot on this episode tonight. You always teach me. I'm so grateful for you. I'm grateful to be your sister. And I'm grateful that you agreed to come on the show tonight. And I know I am not the only one who will be learning so much from you. And I hope you'll come back on the show sometime too.
Of
So
course.
please tell everybody how they can follow you, how they can hire you for makeup and events, how can they support your business. Let's talk about that.
Okay. So I have my Instagram. That's where I post a lot of my makeup, and I also do creative makeup tutorials. And my Instagram is Spotless Adiria. Uh, Spotless, and then Adira. And then it's the same on TikTok. And I post my tutorials on there as well. I'm also developing an art therapy business that helps people with depression and anxiety, mental health, and stuff like that to find a outlet. So I teach classes on there with makeup, and I also will be having these types of conversations with people at my classes, as far as like just trying to help them to find their path. Because I do feel like my art has helped me tremendously with my depression and anxiety and things like that. And then I'm also here if anybody wants to book me for. I do regular makeup too, because I get that question asked a lot. That's how I started. So I want to have a lot of diversity with what I do. So if people want stuff for weddings or birthdays, I got you. And then if you want something more extravagant for like a photo shoot, that's fine with me too, and we can work something out. Yeah.
Wonderful. And Spotless Adira is on Instagram and TikTok, and she is living in Houston doing makeup in Houston, Texas. So if you find yourself in Houston and you are lucky enough to fit into her calendar, prepare to be amazed. Thank you again, Libby, for joining us tonight, and we will see you soon. I will talk to you soon.
Okay. Love you. Bye.
Love you. Good night.
Good night.
And to the viewers, thank you so much for tuning in to this discussion with my sister. It was raw, it was unscripted. She didn't know what questions I would ask, but the conversation was really insightful for me. And I hope that our vulnerability and transparency helps to unlock doors for you in your relationships to grow closer to those that you care about, including yourself. Once again, this has been Raven Thistle Live, and we will see you in 2 weeks, Sunday night, here on YouTube or wherever else you're streaming in from. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.